Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Black Panther. We're used to now what a Marvel movie is. We know how it ebbs and flows. We know what to expect from it. When you're walking into a Marvel movie, you know the formula, and you like the formula. I like the formula. It's an enjoyable formula, and we've all grown accustomed to it. But Black Panther is its own thing entirely, and it's amazing at being its own thing entirely. It's such a breath of fresh air in the MCU. I'm surprised Marvel let this film happen the way it did, the way it flowed, how epic it was, how it had an incredibly charismatic and meaningful and impactful villain, how the ensemble actually sort of overshadowed Black Panther. A lot of people overshadow Black Panther and Chadwick Boseman, even though he does a really great performance in it, but there's so many good performances and there's so many good characters in this, you'll kind of think after a while, like, I don't know if Black Panther is actually my favorite character in the Black Panther movie. There are so many great characters in this film. There's so many people to attach to. There's so many people to care about. The MCU has always been very good at that. It's always been good at its relatability, of speaking to you, of making you care about these characters. But Black Panther does it sort of in that way. It feels like a lot of the jokes in it are certainly straight out of Marvel films, because it is a Marvel film, but it feels in that universe. But why you care about them isn't the kind of same improv-y, Jon Favreau and Iron Man kind of influence the way that you've seen before. This feels like a rich, textured, full color kind of epic that's unique and nuanced, and the kind of Hollywood epic filmmaking that never actually works as well. You see films like on a poster where you have all these fucking characters on a poster, and most of the time when you go later, you're like, oh right, that person. I mean, I guess, sure. And in this, like, I could look at the poster and tell you, something about each character. It is like the wet dream of people who write those movies, or fans of those weird movies that have all those characters, and you're like, yeah, I guess that guy was fine. In this, it's like I passionately care about every one of them, and I think they're epically cool. This movie was amazing to see because I think it restores your faith in Hollywood, which I think Marvel often does. It makes you go like, oh hey, the system can work and I can have an amazing time. It also played on a theoretical level, which Ryan Coogler has always been amazing at. One of the smartest things about Ryan Coogler, and particularly his franchise work, which is like this and Creed, but is that he thinks about the theory of doing it again. When he directs something, he doesn't just go, oh, let's just make like a movie in this series. He thinks theoretically, where should this go? And much like how he theoretically came about a Rocky movie, he does that so much more. It's like next level in terms of all the ideas going on in Black Panther. He thinks about what is the world like with Wakanda? What would it be like to be an isolationist country at a time where people are getting more isolationist? But also talking about what happened to Africa and Black people all over the world and what has happened in the disenfranchisement. Even the villain in this kind of comes at it in a theoretical way, even though he's coming at it in an angry way. I was just so happy with this film, but I was also happy, like, as much as I like things like Spider-Man Homecoming, for example, you sort of get the flow of it. You're kind of used to it. It's almost like you know where this ocean is going. And Black Panther felt different. It felt like the big blockbusters of my youth, that kind of thing, but it also felt perfect in a way. Ryan Coogler has stepped up to epic, big Hollywood filmmaking in a way that very few people can go from independent director on this kind of epic scale and nail it as well as he does. It's frankly awe-inspiring to see what Ryan Coogler has become. After Creed, he became one of my favorite directors, but after this, it's just like he has knocked it out of the park with two classics in franchises. Like, these are intelligently well-directed films within franchises. We don't get this kind of epic direction in franchises every day, and it's an amazing achievement for someone like Coogler to nail this as well as he does. I think one of the bigger, and probably the thing a lot of people are going to talk about, and it's also one of Ryan Coogler's biggest collaborators, is what Michael B. Jordan does in this. And I think what Michael B. Jordan does is probably understand how a villain role needs to be. It was written well, which I think definitely helps. Also, he performs it almost in juxtaposition to what Chadwick Boseman plays. Now, Chadwick Boseman, he is very classic. He's played Jackie Robinson, he's played James Brown, he's played Thurgood Marshall. He's the guy who's going to be in your classy Oscar biopic-y kind of thing. Everyone will be like, oh, he did it so wonderfully. He's kind of the classier kind of actor, and he feels like very worldly and intelligent. In his Black Panther, he brings that kind of gravitas to that role, the very royal, kind of kingly, well-educated kind of role. And he's very good at it, and I think he's perfect for that. But what Michael B. Jordan does is he comes from a kid who's from Oakland, California. He loves hip-hop. Every time he comes in, the hip-hop music plays. I think it's Kendrick Lamar did all the music. Does he do beats as well? I don't know things about rap music anymore, but I do like Kendrick Lamar. But he's hip-hop. He went through things. He learned how to fight. He was in Afghanistan. He did awful, terrible things and didn't care about the morals. He's angry. He is the juxtaposition to Chadwick Boseman, who is this royal, well-educated person who, had everything handed to him. Michael B. Jordan didn't. He struggled and he fought to get where he was, but he plays off of what Chadwick Boseman plays. This actually sort of reminds me of Wrath of Khan. One of the things, Ricardo Montalban certainly chews scenery in that film like crazy, but him and Shatner knew how to play off of each other. Michael B. Jordan's performance as a villain in Black Panther is the villain performance that people have been saying is going to be in blockbusters for almost a decade, and no one has nailed as well as he has. This is Heath Ledger kind of Joker shit right here. It is that kind of a performance, and I have never liked how Hollywood hasn't fully embraced how good of an actor Michael B. Jordan is. That's the other thing. It doesn't feel like a Marvel film, because if this was a Marvel film, you would just focus on Chadwick Boseman. It would be Black Panther. I mean, it still is, but it's like Black Panther and like everybody else sort of. And like, this is like not that way. This is a different kind of movie. And it's almost like Ryan Coogler didn't care about making a MCU Black Panther movie. He almost made a Ryan Coogler Black Panther movie, and I think it is awesome that Kevin Feige and the MCU is as adaptable as they are. You know what, Thor doesn't work, let's just like do something totally different and actually make a good Thor movie. Let's do what's appropriate for Spider-Man. Let's adapt this in the best way possible. And it seems like they went, maybe we shouldn't do the same thing again for Black Panther. Why do we even need to do that? Maybe that won't work for this character. He's not really the fun, jokey Tony Stark kind of thing that we've seen done before. You can't do what you did with Doctor Strange on Black Panther. That just frankly wouldn't work. They came about it and like let Ryan Coogler kind of go off, and it's just really, really awesome. I love how well defined this film is and how different it is. And I loved, I saw this film in Brooklyn. I think it was a majority Black audience. And just seeing how everyone loved the movie and loved the representation. There were these women sitting next to me, and like when the guards did the chain thing, they did that with their bracelets in the audience. It was fun. It was like people were having fun. They were enjoying the film. And this film plays like a 4-quadrant kind of fun, enjoyable blockbuster, but it's also talking about big political themes. It's also talking about the disenfranchisement of people from Africa. It's also talking about isolationism and the problems with that, and should we help the whole world and think globally instead of isolation. But at the same time, it has like all these awesome female warriors and everything. It like sings with representation, but I think one of the smartest things about it is these are such great characters. Whether we need a representation or not, well, I mean, we do. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. But is that these characters are fully fleshed out and there. Like, I love his like female bodyguard. It's just amazing and awesome. And I just like, as soon as she's on screen, I just want to follow her. I love Lupita Nyong'o in probably one of her best roles. We've seen her in like since 12 Years a Slave. I love seeing Angela Bassett again. Andy Serkis not doing CG for once, and really scenery chewing, but like in that epic great actor way. I like Letitia Wright as his sister. Can't wait to see her play off of other people in the MCU, but she has like this kind of real like fun kind of like bratty little sister role, but she also comes up with all the tech. I like Martin Freeman as the lame white guy. He's like really good at it. And I like seeing Forrest Whitaker. I like seeing Daniel Kaluuya. Sterling K. Brown is in this. It's just like, it's so stacked with great performances and great actors. It's hard to watch a scene in this film without seeing so many great actors within Black Panther, and they're all ready to really bring their A game. No one's really half-assing it in Black Panther. It feels like they understand the weight of this film and what it represents to people, and it is so much fun to see this with an audience who really is hungry for it. But honestly, I don't think you would even need that, because this film is so good at what it's doing. My only sort of issue with it is that Ryan Coogler was really good at doing those boxing scenes in Creed, and they were these epic, beautiful one-shot boxing scenes. They were intense, they were amazing, they were kinetic. And in this, all the fight scenes feel very like sort of preordained, or like Marvel picked them out before they hired him. There's one scene like in Korea where they have a fight scene that sort of feels like the vibe of that, but that's like the most he ever gets in that. I know this is not shot by the same person who shot Creed. That was another woman, I believe, but Rachel Morrison, who shot Mudbound, and she's the first female ever nominated for Best Cinematography. She still did a good job, but I didn't think they really had as good of a handle on the fight scenes. I thought those should have been better, but honestly, because so much of this was so great and so well defined, it didn't like hurt the whole movie. Had this been a weaker film, I've been like, look, I came here to see people fight each other, and you should have like brought it a little more. When they have the big special effects sequences, it seems to work a lot better. The end battle works, but when they have these like personal fights, which is sort of a big thing in the plot of this movie, I feel like those should have been to the epic level that we saw in Creed. It felt like, maybe they didn't have enough time to really map that out. As expensive and as beautiful as this film is, it just felt like I was seeing any other fight scene in any other movie. And even the Captain America movies like Winter Soldier gave him some time to really have an epic fight and really have an awesome, well choreographed thing, and I sort of wish they'd maybe spend a little more time on that. Other than that, I think this film is just such an epic kind of big superhero sort of film. The other thing about its relationship in the MCU is you could probably, if you're worried like, do I need to see Civil War, you should, because it's like a fun movie and stuff. But also, it kind of just clues you in on everything. It's just that's the biggest thread, I think, to the other MCU. It's kind of like in its own world, which is sort of like the point of the whole thing. I like kind of its standaloneness, but it's kind of like standalone in this whole other world in the Marvel Universe that we haven't gotten to go into before. And I like the whole like Afro-future kind of idea within this, and the whole idea that like colonialism and what that did to Africa, and if, that had never happened to Africa, and what Africa could have developed within to. It's kind of more of a utopian idea, basically, since we don't actually know what would have happened. It's highly speculative, but it's kind of like this amazing, beautiful city and how modernist it is. And I thought that was like really nice looking. It's kind of a little more reasonable. I know it was sort of inspired by Blade Runner, but it's like if Blade Runner had some sunshine and stuff, which is kind of cool. This is the kind of movie is what Marvel's so good at. And I think Black Panther's always been a big deal, but throughout when I was a kid, he didn't even have his own kind of solo book. I mean, in the 90s he did eventually, but not when I was really into comics. And I think the cool thing about the MCU is they can take characters that are not necessarily the biggest characters, or a character that represents something to a lot of people, and that includes even the first Marvel movie, Iron Man, and make him represent something to people and make that character into something. And I think Black Panther does that very well. I think the one thing I love the most about Black Panther is it still felt like a blockbuster. Certainly it still felt like an expensive special effects movie, but it felt like a really great epic one. And I loved how Wakanda had some weight to it. I loved meeting all the different characters within it, and I loved seeing them all interact with one another. I loved being in this world, and it flows so well. This movie's 2 hours and 15 minutes. When you get to 2 hour and 15 minute movies, usually people always go towards the end, like, I don't know, that was a little too long. And this, everyone was commenting like, that went by really quickly. It has a flow to it. But then towards the end, you're like, wait, how long ago were we like even in Korea? You would notice how much changes. It's like, it is an epic in scope, but it doesn't feel it. It goes by so seamlessly. I would actually recommend this film to people who don't really like MCU movies. This is kind of like one of the more outstanding ones. I'm so excited by Ryan Coogler and what he could potentially do after this film, but I really think he brought his own original, different kind of voice to it while also sort of being an MCU movie. However, he is so good at using franchises to work within his auteur voice, but also end up being one of the better examples of that franchise at the same time. I know a lot of people talk about someone like Ryan Johnson. Like, Ryan Johnson was able to do all this stuff with the Star Wars movie, but it's interesting that Ryan Coogler seems to do it almost like more seamlessly than Ryan Johnson even did with Last Jedi. It like, because you don't feel like he's like really challenging all these things and doing all these different things. It doesn't feel like that much of a departure in some regard, but in another regard, it is a huge departure, and he's completely gone off the reservation, but he's making a whole community and doing so many different things with it. You just want to see this film and see how it does it, and you're not even thinking about how it's different. You're just so in it. And he made a really enjoyable, really watchable movie. That's what this film is first and foremost, but it's also being surreal, doing like drug trippy things where people get covered in sand and shit. I thought this was a movie where people get into like futuristic cat costumes and scratch each other. Apparently there's like a lot more going on here. He does all these things within Black Panther, and there's such a soul soul and such a love for it and such a love for Africa, going into Africa and the history of Africa and the history of these nations and the history of what got Africa the way it is, while also kind of making an epic superhero story. I could almost review this and not talk about Black Panther, but also I think Black Panther is a big part of it. It's a contradiction in itself, but somehow it all works and is wonderful and amazing. I think this is a film that I love seeing because I think cinema needed this. We needed something to be exciting. We needed something to be different. I personally needed something to see with an audience that made me feel like almost whole again and made my cinematic life feel whole again because I had such a great time with it. Maybe it isn't technically really a perfect movie, and maybe I don't know what the perfect or best MCU movie is, but all I can tell you is the epic journey of this film, seeing the villain that Michael B. Jordan played, seeing all the things that go on within this film, seeing the epicness of everything was an amazing, beautiful thing that I was able to see in my cinematic lifetime. I'm very happy to have sat down and experienced such an epic, beautiful, different kind of superhero movie like Black Panther and everything that it represents, because everything it represents it does so fucking well. It's almost astonishing. So if you have seen Black Panther and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.